Matt Waters. I'm the chair of the languages department, and I am standing in for Karen Hallholm, who extends her regrets. She could not be here today, but it is my pleasure to introduce my colleague, Dr. Jessica Miller, professor of French, head of the French section, DPC chair, the list goes on. She's not wearing her cape with the S on today. I'm guessing maybe that would because it clashed with your outfit, but I'm not the person to ask for sartorial advice. Anyway, Jessica is going to speak to us on her Cajun immersion experience that she has done over 2 cohorts, you said, with Doug Faulkner in geography and some of the results from such. So without further ado, I'll give you Jessica Miller and creative placemaking in Louisiana.
Okay, so I'm going to be talking about Arnaudville, or as they say in English, Arnaudville, Louisiana, which is a little town, but it's a town that is getting international recognition for their creative placemaking efforts, and I'm going to be talking about that. How they have come together, the people of Arnaudville have come together in the past 10 years to highlight their Cajun French identity and tie it to local art to boost the economy. So this group effort successfully managed to bring together diverse and sometimes politically divided people to work toward a common goal, which is highlighting what makes Arnaudville special in order to help their town in disrepair. I will describe this process and explain how Cajun French was used as one of the catalysts. I'll also share my field observations. So one question that is always on my mind is, why are languages other than English relevant in the United States today? And so a lot of answers that come to mind is, thinking of the Spanish-speaking population or migrants, but then how does French work into all that? So there are migrants from French-speaking countries, but also there's a lot of French in the history or in people's identity. And especially when you think of Eau Claire, right? So a lot of, it's just a name, but if you stop and think about it, it's French. And what does that mean about our town's identity? So you might think, oh, French in the United States, well, that's in Louisiana, but it's in a lot of different places, and in Wisconsin too. I'm sure you can think of a lot of towns with a French name other than Eau Claire. Any volunteers?
Flambeau, Lac du Flambeau.
Lac du Flambeau.
Prairie du Chien.
Prairie du Chien, Prairie du Chien, or
Bâton Rouge.
Bâton Rouge in Louisiana. What else? Detroit in Michigan. So if you, even just in Wisconsin, if you look at town names, you'll see a lot of French names. And in Eau Claire today, how is French part of the identity of our town? So it turns out that it wasn't settled by French people, but when there's this whole story of French explorers coming to the confluence and saying, voici l'eau claire, because the Eau Claire River and the Chippewa River, they met, and one was brown, the one they had been following, I think it was the Chippewa River, and it was brown because of the tannin in the water, and then they saw clear water, Eau Claire, and so that's the story. I'm not sure if it's real or legend, but then people, when they named the town later, French was kind of cool, so exotic, and I'm like, hey, let's call our town Eau Claire, even though there weren't really French people settling in the town. But I don't know how many of you know that Eau Claire has a seal, an official seal. So here it is. And that was done, when was Gilles Bousquet here? 4 or 5 years ago? 5 years ago. So with the interim chancellor and the city, and so they chose French words to put on the city seal. So I think with languages we connect globally, but also we can connect locally, even with French, Spanish, or many other languages in the United States. And those languages help us understand our complex identities. So keep that in mind. I'm going to be talking about creative placemaking. And I'm going to read the definition. Creative placemaking is an inclusive approach that uses art and design as a catalyst to help communities regenerate themselves. Partners from public, private, nonprofit, and community sectors collaborate to shape the physical or social character of their town, neighborhood, or city. The resulting project may take the form of a cultural activity, the regeneration of buildings or streetscapes, or the development of a new landmark or destination. And there's an important paper published about creative placemaking a few years ago, I think 2011, and it describes creative placemaking in a few towns in the United States, and Arnaudville was one of the examples of successful placemaking. So here's a little diagram just to show how people, places, and businesses and organizations work together for creative placemaking. So a little bit about Arnaudville. Here's a map. It was founded by Jacques Arnaud, and 35% of residents speak French today. And it's a small town, so it's not a lot of people. I'm going to show you some footage. Just so you can visualize it. Can you see anything? Is it no? I don't know how much. I don't know how brightness. But you can see fields, right? So it's very rural. But then there's also a little downtown. So here's a little story from a TV show in Quebec. They went to Arnaudville to talk about that little French-speaking town.
Arnaudville est un village de 1500 habitants situé au cœur de la Louisiane, sur le bayou Teche. Ici, on est en pays cadien. 35% de la population parle encore français. Le village a été fondé par un Français, Jacques Arnaud, en 1805, et les Arnaud y sont toujours, plus de 200 ans plus tard. Mavis Arnaud-Fruger est en quelque sorte la marraine du village. Elle est une rassembleuse et une organisatrice. Elle tente par tous les moyens de faire vivre la langue française dans le sud des États-Unis. Et quand Mavis demande un service, on est incapable de lui dire non.
Okay, so that's Arnaudville. For French speakers, did you get how many people live in Arnaudville? 1500? 1,500. So in that video, I presented some pictures of the NuNu Collective. And all that creative placemaking started with the creation of NuNu. It's a collective. It's run by volunteers. It's an educational nonprofit that works to encourage the development of artistic talents, skills, knowledge, and business savvy by connecting artists with other artists, businesses, organizations, and programs. It serves as a stage platform gallery for creative living, by facilitating community, economic, and artistic cultural development. So it's this place along the road that they've renamed the Corridor des Arts, the Art Corridor, and that was created by Mavis and George Marks. And it kind of started with George, who grew up in Arnaudville, and he's a painter. And he was living in Baton Rouge, and then he wanted to move to New York City. And unfortunately, his father was very sick, and so he decided to go back to Arnaudville before moving to New York City. And that's when he saw Arnaudville was really, buildings were crumbling, you know, there was, no one was moving in anymore, everybody was leaving, he was gonna leave, and he decided, no, I can do something here, I need to do something. And so at Nunu, they started with this place, and they started holding a French conversation table. So here's an example.
Bonjour. Quel beau matin pour parler en français.
I am Mavis Arnaud-Frouger, and I host a French table the last Saturday of every month at Nunu's in Arnaudville. All French tables are different. The one thing we have in common, it's in French. It doesn't matter which French, be it Creole, Cajun, international, whatever.
J'ai juste fini l'entraînement, j'ai pas fini le matin. For those of you here for the first time who don't speak French, French tables are throughout Acadiana, and this one is ongoing for 11 years. It's our effort to preserve the French that we have here.
Bonjour messieurs, comment ça va?
Ah, c'est pas moi, moi je suis numéro 3.
Bonjour messieurs, comment ça va? Ça va bien?
You never know who you'll meet here. One morning we had an opera singer who is the backup singer for Placido Domingo and a French prince. In Arnaudville? Really? All speaking French. Come on, join us.
So that's Nunu. Everything is taking place there, and they weren't putting on a show. This is really how friendly and outgoing and inclusive they are in real life. So with Nunu, they use creativity and language to boost the economy by emphasizing distinctiveness and mobilizing public will. So what's important there is that George and Mavis really got people motivated and engaged and volunteers to come to the French table, and that created links in the community. And they also used Nunu, just a space for art. So there's a corner of Nunu where there's art in progress, and so it's people can just come and create art there and then display it. And so after that, I mean, it wasn't immediate, so it's a long process, but after that, businesses started moving into Arnaudville, and just through networks, through friends. For example, the Little Big Cup is a restaurant, and it's owned by Kevin and Sanjay. They're the owners, and one is from Arnaudville and had moved to New York City and then decided to come back and start his restaurant. And his partner is Sanjay, who is from Trinidad, and so Kevin's the cook and Sanjay is more the manager. And so that's another space where people just eat, or they have space for meeting too. And here's our group when we went to Little Big Cup, and they welcomed us with this art. Someone drew that for us. It's just amazing. before taking us to Nunu. So then they had a violin shop that opened too, and then the second time when we came back, the grocery store had just reopened as well. And so every year they just add a little bit. And one thing that businesses have done is take part of the Ici on parle français campaign. So there's an Ace Hardware, for example, and then they say, here we speak French. So you can come and shop in French. And so they put those, they created a few videos that I want to show you. And I think the Ace Hardware is my favorite because we have them in Eau Claire too. And how I wish that's how, you know, I could shop.
Bonjour, moi j'ai Janelle Leblanc. Je travaille pour Monsieur Michael Pierce à Ace Hardware à Arnaudville. Ça c'est la business est ouvert 6 jours par semaine, fermé dimanche. Viens voir à Ace Hardware.
So you can tell they just want to speak French. You know, they don't make professional videos, but they're welcoming. So here's another one for the new grocery store.
Je m'appelle Megan. Bonjour, mon nom c'est Gerald Mistré. Je travaille ici chez Russell's dans le produce department. Viens nous voir entre 8h30 le matin jusqu'à 2h30 l'après-midi, lundi jusqu'à vendredi. Ici, on parle français.
So they just say when they're open, and here we speak French. And the city hall has one, and a few other businesses do as well. And if you've learned French, you can tell that it's really Cajun French, so it's very different from standard French. Here are some pictures of Nunu. So here's George, and then there's space. They have a French week in April. They have some festivals with music, and they also started an exchange with a French town in Western France. And a lot of French officials have come to the French week in Arnaudville. A lot of people from Canada too come. So there's music. And the latest project is there's a former hospital. They're trying to repurpose it. And so new volunteers have worked with city council to get that going and approved. And one idea is to turn the hospital into an immersion place so they could have rooms and programs done in French. And then the very latest thing, like, they're just so active. I don't know how they do it. Now they've partnered to build tiny houses. Have you heard of tiny houses? Well, they're building them in Arnaudville. And so there too, it's tiny houses that you can rent or buy. And so one of their plans is to also provide lodging for tourists or for immersion programs, so in those houses. On top of that, now there's a variety of programs and classes that are held at Nunu, like cooking classes or French classes, building. So they everything on their space, they try to find volunteers and build things. They've had people from Italy through this program where it's like people looking for volunteers, and then it's this website, and if anywhere in the world, if you want to volunteer, you see, oh, there's an opportunity to build something in Louisiana, and so they have gotten people from all over the world to help. The French government has recognized Mavis with a national honor, as well as Arnaudville on several occasions, so for the contribution to the French language. And something that I just find amazing is that the French embassy has an official library in Washington, D.C., Boston, Miami, Arnaudville, Houston, Portland, and Chicago. So it just shows you how big Arnaudville is in the French speaking world. I'm not sure people in France know about it, but they're going to soon.
Jessica, have you ever been to Portland?
Yes.
Have you gone to Powell's?
What's that?
Have you gone to Powell's Books?
Yes.
The store? I mean,
Yeah.
it's incredible.
Yeah,
the
it's-
size,
yeah.
especially when you compare it to Arnaudville.
Yeah, so I guess I've been to 2 of those places. Well, the bookstore in Arnaudville it's 2 tables, but
That's even more
it's
impressive.
there, it's available. So here's another photo of Eau Claire students at the Pavillon de l'Eau. So they decide to make Claire with their, I don't know if it's obvious, so, yeah. And so the students, they attended a French table and they interviewed the volunteers to learn about their stories, especially involving water. What was it like growing up in Louisiana around this water or with the weather? How about language? Because in Louisiana, there was a time when people were punished for speaking French, and so some of the older people remember being punished for speaking French at school, and how that changed. There's this, it's called the Lost Generation, with a generation that was punished for speaking French, so they did not teach French to their children. And the children of those children, now they're like, oh, I so want to know French. Why didn't you teach me? And so in 1968, Codophile was created, which helps with French in Louisiana. And so they have some funds and they're trying to do immersion schools. But one of the choices they made is to teach international French rather than Cajun French. And so some people might regret that, but at the same time, there's not one Cajun French, and that's also something that students learn by talking to people. Like a difference of 5 miles might mean that the word for window is totally different. And so that's why it's kind of hard to teach French again in an immersion context nowadays, because which French do you use? And so Codophile opted to bring in teachers from Belgium and France to teach international French. But I guess, if you go to, that's why Mavis said any French is welcome here, because there's so many types of French, but we can still understand each other. So here we are with the students. We were helping with this project where they have those columns and they built birdhouses with GPS devices on top. And it's this project that connects a lot of different French-speaking towns across the USA, and they have one in France too. And then as I was preparing this presentation, I saw very sad news in Arnaudville. So there was a crash earlier this month, and the driver died, and one of their buildings that they had just renovated burnt down completely. And it just reminded me of the story of Arnaudville and Nunu and so many hardships. Mavis lost her house 2-3 years ago, and then she said, I quote, "If you wish to help me support French language and cultural immersion efforts, if you feel a need to donate, then donate to the Semaine Française France-Louisiane Fund at the Community Foundation of Academia." So it's just, French is so much part of her identity, Louisiana French, that's how she feels she can be helped, by making the community stronger. And that's how actually Nunu started in 2010. They lost their market, and so George Marx said that as devastating as that fire was, so it's like 3 fires in 8 years, he said that the break in activity resulted in the time to step back and rethink directions. The question before us was, should we try to recreate what was or define? And he says, an evaluation was conducted that resulted in 4 general areas of concentration: arts and culture, career development, education, and sustainable development. And so that's the direction that they've pursued, and George and Mavis have been able to get other people to join in, which is really the key. Going back to the diagram of creative placemaking, people, businesses, and places. And so that's the model they followed, and they followed that successfully. Now there's also a new organization to clean the river there, the Teche, to create trails. So how we have bike trails, they're developing a canoe trail. And so it's just had led. They also have a new brewery there. So that's another link with Wisconsin, a lot of breweries. Basically, my concluding remark was that, it's okay. Creative placemaking inspires and is inspired, and it connects and unites people along a shared vision. And so that's what they have in Arnaudville. And so that makes me think about Eau Claire and our identity. Is there a shared vision, and how can our disciplines connect to that identity? So I thought of maybe, having just a discussion at your table or all together. What is Eau Claire's identity, in your opinion?
Well, I think more and more the creative economy is really at the forefront of growth and evolution here in the city. It's been pretty evident by the Confluence Center and by the growing number of music festivals and small businesses focusing on the arts, etc.
And can we call that creative placemaking?
Yeah, I think so.
That's where I ask myself the question: is that a shared vision where people are moving in the same direction, or is it just kind of a coincidence, or is it just Justin Vernon deciding where to take our town? I don't know.
Well, how much time do you want to connect with me? Building up what Carter said, for those of us who have been around for several years, I don't remember the exact number, but if you walk down to where Phoenix Park is now, 10 years ago, it was, was it 10 years ago? It was a dump, basically. And so, I think there has been a vision that's been shaped, modified as goes along, but that certainly applies.
Yeah, I think that sense of community that Volume 1 has helped create, the music scene, that is very important. And then I love that Justin Vernon keeps using French with the Eau Claire the music festival, and there the stage names are all in French as well. But is that just a gimmick, or is that something real? A lot of students, before actually going to Louisiana, they thought that Cajun French was kind of a touristy gimmick. And then when they got there, they saw, oh, wait, people are actually using French, every day. And so there's a difference there, too, with the use of language. And that's all I have. Thank you so much for coming.